Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. It is time once again for the letter of the week. The letter is D, and you are saying, Anne, there are hearts on your desk. Heart doesn't start with a D. I had these sitting around the other day, and they were sort of just like in a pile of stuff laying on top of each other like this. And it occurred to me, those almost could make a dragonfly if these two hearts are positioned this way. And so I experimented a little bit more, and I put two hearts together like this, and it formed this really cute little dragonfly. My only quibble with this one is it looks a little prim and proper. So I thought, why don't we use D for Dragon of the Week? The D, Dragonfly for Letter of the Week. But we're trying to make them a little more exaggerated, a little more whimsical, a little more fun, a little less prim and proper. There's nothing wrong with this. I will certainly use this. So I mean no disrespect to this little dragonfly. But you can see I used hearts that were kind of narrow and had a fairly deep cleft, but I want to make them more so. So I have a few like this that I think might work. Okay, I really went deep on the cleft here, but they're kind of big. Let me show you the process that I used for making these, because I think it might be, you might enjoy seeing how easy it is as well. I want the wings to be, they don't have to be exact mirrors of each other, but I want them to be fairly similar in size. I don't want them to look grotesque. So let's use a little piece of manila folder here. And we're going to just get a fold in there. And let me pull out some of my sharpest scissors. Those of you that saw the near accident that I had with myself with scissors a few weeks ago will say, Anne, be careful. Those are the sharp ones. They are. I'm just going to get into cutting. I'm going to do a larger one and a smaller one. The beauty with doing a little template like this is that you can keep cutting at it. It's not going to be right the first time through. I'm going to make a pretty deep cleft here. And this is, if you think of this in with one across from it's almost butterfly-like. So I want those wings to be pretty narrow. So let's come in rather significantly. And again, come deep down in the middle. It's almost not a heart anymore. It's really exaggerated, but you start with a heart. I think this might be okay. I think I'm going to maybe make it a little more narrow and then flare out at the end, and maybe come in here and flare out again. Not certain if that'll work. Yeah, that looks kind of whimsical. We're going to be changing the shape anyway, so I'm going to try not to get too hung up on the shape. But starting with a heart and then really trimming it down. Here's our large one. I want to make one that's smaller because I want to go into be able to use this as a smaller embellishment as well. And it's easier certainly to make the big ones. But let's do the same thing. We're going to start with a heart. I'm going to try to start with this one being a little more narrow than the one before, relatively speaking. Way down. I think I like that one. I think I like the proportions. I think I like the width for the smaller size. Now, what do I want? use for this one. I might, what do I have here on my desk? I have this little tag that I'm not really using for anything. I can't really get 2 out of that though. Yeah, I could easily get 2 out of that. All right, I'm just going to use a pencil. And I'm not going to worry about getting a really precise trace here. I'm just going to at least get the proportions right. And there's one. It's hard for you to see that, I'm sure, but I can see it, I think. Yeah, this sunflower paper looks somewhat whimsical on this tag. This was in a bunch of autumn things I had done. I'm going to do some of my embellishments on this because it's easier to do that when it's on a full sheet of a larger piece of paper rather than cut into little individual things. And I believe I'm going to trace around the edge with my white marker. But you don't have to do this part. You can trace around with black. You can trace around with whatever kind of color you want. You could do sewing machine stitching. You could just ink the edges. You just do whatever you want. But you can see this is a little bit easier to do when I'm on the uncut page. Now, can I see where where my pencil marks were? Here, I can, barely, but close enough is good enough in this case. All right. I've been a little bit off there, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to set this aside because I want this acrylic paint outline to dry. And let's go back to this larger one. That looks a little wonky. It looks a little... wonky is okay. It looks a little almost sickly, though. I'm okay with it being wonky. I want it to be whimsical. But it looks almost a little too peculiar. By the time I get it traced down and cut out, I think that's going to be fine. Here's a little piece from a magazine page. I like that. Why don't I see how this works? Or do I want to go, I think maybe I'll go with a piece of book page. I did a little bit of distress ink dyeing here. And the reason that I decided to switch is, in looking at this, I was thinking this would make a really good background for a tag. So I had last minute cold feet about using that one. There we go. And I'm not worried about getting similar angles. But you can see how starting with a heart can really help you get to the sort of shape that you want. There we go. Do I want, I think I'm going to do the white paint thing again here. I do find these extremely useful. And it's easy to find white acrylic markers wherever you get your art supplies. I switched starting places because it was just a lot easier to see from the angle I'm looking at this right now. If I go like this rather than starting at the point. There we go. Oh my golly, this is something you can do with your kids or your grandkids, isn't it? You can see how really, really simple this is. And then we'll get to putting them together in dragonfly form, putting a little body on there. Yeah, this white paint has pretty good coverage. I probably should have drawn this one a little bit further away, but you know, I was trying to conserve paper. Let's see if this has dried. Yes, that's fine. Now I'm going to come in with my gel pen that is not even an art pen. It's just what this is what I use to write my journals with. And I'm just going to, you've seen me use this technique a lot. I'm not worried about being precise. Then I'm going to do a second line, and I'm going to deliberately go a little wonky so it's not right on top of the first one, and give it that sort of whimsical feel, that handmade feel. There's that. Those are going to be our wings. I maybe could have positioned those templates a little bit better, but you know, let's just keep on going. Are these dry yet? Not quite. Not quite. We'll go ahead and cut out these. You've seen me do this before, but I find the easiest way to cut out hearts, especially when they have this really deep cleft like this, is to come in with an X-Acto knife and do the main portion of that deep point with the X-Acto knife. Because to come in with scissors is, it's hard to get in and out of that little space of real estate. So this is just a way I make it easier for myself. And I'm going to get pretty close to that white edge, but it doesn't, it can show a little bit of the sunflower paper. Now that center part is cut for me already. Did I get it all the way through there? Not quite. There we go. I do like using an X-Acto knife, but you don't need one. There we go. And did that come through all the way? Yes, it did. And then we'll get to making our little dragonfly. And it can be on the top of a tag. That little prim and proper one that I made earlier, it could almost go on the front of a little journal or a notebook, couldn't it? I think it would be super cute as a little topper. You know, maybe with, you know, the word journal or notes or whimsy or something underneath there. All right, there are the makings of our little dragonfly. I think I'm going to just grab a little piece of black cardstock, but you know, you don't need cardstock. You can pull up a piece of a magazine image that has something dark or something colorful. And is that about the length that I want? Yeah, that'll be okay. All right, I'm just going to freehand cut a little head here, a little neck, and then come out for its little torso. I don't know what the proper name is for what this dragonfly body part is. And we'll just call it its little body. And again, not if dragonflies are segmented in any sort of special way, I don't have any of that knowledge. So not meaning to be realistic in that way. Good. What should we mount it on? Here's a little piece of a journal. A little piece of a journal card. That looks cute. What if we wanted to mount it on something? I wonder how it would look on this kind of background. That doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look too bad at all. Let me do a little tearing here. Or do we want a circle? We might, I think that might look kind of nice on a little circle out of music page. I think also I'm overthinking at this point. So let me just sort of tear here, and we'll ink this little piece. This is just a piece of coffee dyed paper with a little bit of stamping on. I use these swooshes all the time. They make excellent backgrounds. And we'll just ink this and see how that works as a background for this little whimsical dragonfly. And then maybe our pink and purple one will be dried enough that we can see how the larger size is going to look. While I'm doing this, I'll bring these out to show you. I made a couple from maps. I think the maps look really cute. And that's a smaller size hearts as well. Well, I didn't do a really good job on that inking, did I? There we go. Where did our little sunflower guys go? How could I have lost them? Oh, they're right here. There we go. Yeah, I think that might be okay. Now, I'm going to have to cut the bottom off of one of them. And the little body is going to cover up the join, I think. Is that? Yeah. I'm going to snip off the bottom as well. Here's my scissors. So just a little bit of trimming is going to prevent you from having all kinds of unsightliness. And is this going to be balanced? I think so. I'm going to tilt some of them, tilt them a little bit down so that they're not looking really, really asymmetrical. Here, I think that's close enough. I might trim off just a little bit more. These could almost be just butting up next to each other. There's still time to manipulate. There we go. So let's glue this down on our little background piece. And Let's get our little dragonfly body doing its job. It doesn't want to be left out. Okay. That's still a little prim and proper. It's certainly usable, but it doesn't have quite the, real wackiness that I wanted to get. But maybe our pink and purple ones will do the job a little bit more. To add to the whimsy, I'm just going to draw in some curly antenna. And that will hopefully bring a little bit of that whimsy in. And how would this look on this journal card? It's okay. Yeah, I think I'm feeling okay about it. I feel like I'm again damning with faint praise. It's okay. But it doesn't quite have the real whimsy that I'm looking for. It's certainly usable. Usable. Poor thing. It's not its fault. Yeah, it's usable. That's fine. These will go in the okay usable. But you can see I didn't quite make this one as exaggerated as I had in my mind when I saw how I wanted to change this one. Now, this one is quite a bit more exaggerated. Let's see if our drawing situation is going on. It is. And these, pretty ugly looking hearts. But I'm going to use the same process. I won't even call it a technique because there's nothing special about it. I do think that the double lines around the edge are something that kind of add a whimsical touch. Because they're not straight, they're not planned. There's a bit of energy to the unexpected nature of these lines. All right. Let me do the same thing about cutting that center point, that cleft, so that I don't have to get in there with my pointy scissors. You may not want to do this. I hope if you know anything from my channel, it is that you should do the things, do things your way. Don't copy what I do. That is not necessary. In fact, if you ever read the comments, any comment, any question that begins with, could I, ... the answer to that is always, of course you can. Could you? Yes, you can. Of course you can. You can at least try it. Will it work? I don't know. But you should definitely try. And I think this might, just because of the distress ink and the splotching on the book page, I think that might give us a little more whimsy. But it can be whimsical, based on the type of journal that it's in, the background that it goes on. So I haven't lost all whimsy, even if the dragonflies seem like they're being a little prim and proper. I could always do some doodling inside there that would add to the whimsy as well. I hadn't thought about doing that. I'm not a very skilled doodler. Although I've spent plenty of time in meetings where I was probably looked like I was taking notes and I was just doodling in my notebook off to the side. That's looking a little more whimsical, isn't it? I'm starting to react a little more positively to this one, whether it's the larger size or just that, you know, really distended nature of the heart and that deep cleft. I don't know what's making me feel like this one is a little more whimsical, but we'll get it pasted down and we'll see. We'll see what the situation is. Oh, we're having such a lovely day here in Portland today. Dan and I had lunch out on the front porch, just looking at the neighborhood, enjoying the garden. Our neighbors, Jen and Brian, were out for a noontime walk, and they came by and said hello. And it was nice to see them. Nice to be out on the front porch. What do I want to put this on? You might hear that air purifier going off. That might be it. Yeah, I think I like that. I think I'm going to cut up this old brochure that happened to be sitting on my desk. And let's just get that sort of sliced down. I will put it on a card back. This is where those pre-made cards and tags that we did together very recently, where I used a file folder and did a master board of neutrals for tag backs, and then you just decorate the front when you're ready. That would be perfect for this. I would pull one out, except I have used all those up already. They're just so handy. So I'm not going to ink the edges here. This is just a little circle from my scrap bin. And yeah, I like the idea of this this little whimsical dragonfly being here in this Rocky Mountain scene. Now, let's start trimming off the points here. And hope that I didn't make those too trimmed. There we go. Looks like I could make it more of an angle here. And I think, yeah, I think sort of tilting them, I think that might be the key. Yeah, I think I want the taller one, at least for this dragonfly. I think it might be good to have these a little bit opposite, you know, a little bit straighter, and then these angled down. Again, not certain how that's supposed to go in the wild. I'll cut my strip first. Dan and I today did see some tiger swallowtails, some butterflies that are out enjoying the neighborhood. It's the first time we've seen those butterflies this season, so that was exciting to see. And just wonderful to be enjoying a beautiful spring day outside, having friends come by. Jen and Brian are both much younger than we are, and in their working years, but they both work from home. They have a 16-year-old son, and we're out enjoying a nice noon walk, taking a break from work, and it was nice. They happened to walk by our house, and we happened to be outside and had a nice chat. Yeah, that's looking a little more whimsical, and I think because that cleft is coming a lot closer into the body on this one than this one. This one is a little bit further out. Again, usable, but I think I'm making progress in learning how to make these. So let's just get a little bit of glue here on this little background circles. Having it, you know, having a little stash of circles around really helps you to ground things. They almost always just look great if you're anchoring a focal point on a tag or something like that. And I'm going to get this glued down and get this here situated on this little Rocky Mountain scene. There we go. And I might trim him down just a little bit. Don't know why that seemed like the thing to do, but we do what we feel moved to do, don't we? There we go. D for dragonfly. And I'm going to do a little bit of a curly antenna, or antlers, as Gail calls them. There we go. That looks a lot more whimsical. I think the pink helps too, frankly. I will mount this onto something, and I think that's going to look great. So there's our D. There's our D for letter of the week for the dragonfly. And let's get that recorded, because heaven knows we don't want to have our letters of the week go untallied here. That's going to be D for dragonfly. There we go. Now, you know what the next exciting thing is. The big ending of every letter of the week video is to decide what's going to be our next not so obvious letter of the week. Are you ready? You can see that's the little envelope that I'm putting our used up letters in. So what are we going to have for May 25th? I see on my calendar that May 25th is Wine Day. W-I-N-E, not W-H-I-N-E. So it would be so funny if I picked W, but I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm going to have here. This is R. Are you ready for next week's letter of the week? I am not yet, but I will be by next Sunday. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy making your dragonflies. Enjoy thinking whatever you can think of that starts with the letter D to follow along with the letter of the week. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.